Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean. And this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Please check us out online at couplesynergy.com or on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Couple Synergy. And please subscribe to our podcast, leave us a review, or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couple Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring your experience helping thousands of couples transform their relationships for over 25 years.
You know, every day we get to hear intimate details about a couple's celebrations, disappointments, and everyday challenges. We've often wished these stories were shared because we know we are more similar than different. So we've created not only an avenue you can hear about people's intimate lives, but an atmosphere where people come over to our home saloon, pour a drink, and share their stories.
People like today's guests, Damon and Celeste. Damon Nichols is the author of The Breakout Blueprint, Reforming Old Belief Systems, Eliminating Toxic Habits, and Overcoming Fear to Achieve True Freedom. I want to thank the two of you for being on our podcast today. I know you guys have a really very interesting story, Damon. We want to definitely jump into that. But thank you again for being on our podcast today, guys.
And thank you for having us. Yeah, we're honored to be here.
So, before we dive into your story, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about yourselves? How old are you? How long have you guys been together? And what do you do for a living?
You want to tell them about us a little bit?
We've been together almost 20 years, married for almost 15, right?
Almost 15 years, yes.
Yeah, 15. I lost track. But we live in La Junta, Colorado. Actually, I'm sorry, we live in Rocky Ford, another neighboring little town. And
so
I'm a stay-at-home mom.
yes. And she's 45, I'm 55. And we've been through so much together. We own a few different businesses. We actually met in a treatment center in 2002. We were both trying to get our lives together at that point. And we just were kind of friends at that time. And it wasn't until after we got out of treatment, about 6 months after that, we reconnected at an NA meeting. And kind of from there, we've been together. But we own a few different businesses. We own some real estate. We bought and sold quite a bit of properties, cleaned up a lot of properties around Otero County. And we have a restaurant that's it's been a rough road. It's called Creekside Smokehouse. It's a barbecue place. And we also own a storage shed building company. We kind of travel all around the country and put up storage sheds. So that's kind of what we do. And we've become best friends, and it wasn't always like that. There was a time where we did not get along very well. We could barely sit in the same room. So
Another important factor is we do have 7 children between the two of us. He had 3, I have 3, and then we have 1 together. 6 are all adults and out of the house. Then we have our 14-year-old who's still at home. And then we are grandparents of the 4th one on the way, but they're all girls. So 4 grandbaby girls.
Nice.
Fantastic. We are actually new grandparents ourselves. So congrats to you guys.
To a little girl.
To a little girl.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm a huge fan of barbecue. So I think if we swing over to the eastern part of the state there, we might have to
Stop
come by,
in.
check out your brisket.
Definitely, yeah, the briskets.
My favorite.
Yeah.
So your question for them, right?
Well, they sort of started
They
to talk
started
about how you
talking
met,
about
but
their
talk
relationship.
about how you guys got together.
So we met in a program called Stout Street Foundation, and it's a 2-year treatment program, and usually that's a program that's when you've gone through like everything else, and that's kind of the last step. For me, it was the alternative to a 12-year prison sentence. So when you go through one of these programs, it's 2 years. You don't you spend the first few months in there, you have no contact with the outside world whatsoever, and you're doing all of this really deep work on yourself, and at the same time, usually more times than not, coming off of some kind of an addiction, and so we met in those kind of circumstances, and we kind of got to know each other. I was actually in a position where I was an orientation coordinator, and I'd been there a few months, and all of the people that came in, I taught them all of the rules and how to work their way through the program. And she was the one that first came in and got to be basically kind of like one of my she's considered one of my OTs, which is somebody that I got to train through the progress. And we never really had any. There was no was not nothing between us at all. Just we saw each other from day to day, and that was about it. So
And then what happened?
so we got out and we met at this NA meeting, and
Well, he got out before I did, and then I was in the end part of the program, and we were required to go to AA or NA meetings. And so that's where I reconnected with him. And basically, he just asked for my phone number and told me he was going to call me all the time, and he called me the next day, and that we've been together ever since.
yeah, so we went through some. I know it was a really kind of weird relationship because I had a few years before I'd gotten in an accident, and the mother of my 2 oldest boys was killed. So I was dealing with that when she came along and kind of got involved with all of me trying to heal and process that. So she got kind of it was hard. It was hard. She kind of got the raw deal with me, and I don't know what it was that she saw in me, but it was something. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy. We started dating, and she was at the finishing out the last part of the program. And then we moved in together, and we went to Winter Park for a year, and it was rough because I had my 2 oldest boys living with me at the time, and so she took this huge responsibility on, and it was hard. And then we moved back to Denver, and we got our own places, kind of did our own thing for a little while, and then we ended up. She got pregnant, we got married, like all happened kind of at the same time. And I guess I had just realized, you know what, this is the woman that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I just got to the point where I couldn't drag my feet anymore. And I think she felt like, what's this guy gonna do? Is he serious? Is he, so
Well, it had been 5 years at that
yeah.
point. So
What was it about each other that you fell in love with?
Well, so I'm a musician. I think the fact that she liked that about me was very attractive to me. She's got such a beautiful smile, and she's just so beautiful and radiant. I don't know. I think that was the big thing that, yeah, really, I really fell in love with. Is she's just so beautiful and so um, soft spoken, she was very attractive to me. So, and it grew into more than that. So I don't know what it is about me.
Well, I think, I was 24 when I went into the program, and it was 2 years, like you said, and there was a lot of, most of those men liked to, they were like, well, the women were like prey, for these men. And so one thing that really stood out to me, and that was in the world I was in before I went, I had an alcohol addiction and drugs too, but more alcohol. And just the people I hung out with were, I didn't have a lot of self worth. I didn't have any confidence. So basically, my looks equated to my worth. And so I was very used to men coming after me in that way. And he was never that way to any of the women in our program. And that really stood out to me. And so, yeah, it was very intriguing. And it wasn't until we were out when I saw him that I started realizing that because he had a girlfriend, through the program. And so we just didn't, mess with each other. But he wasn't with her anymore when I saw him at the meeting. So
She broke up with me when I went in, pretty much. I didn't know it till a year later, but
yeah, so we just started hanging out as friends, and I think just he was very calm. He was very just had this sense of I don't know, like I just felt emotionally safe with him right off the bat, and I'd never felt that before. So I think he's very intelligent, very talented, and there's there's a lot of things that I didn't always. I don't think I could articulate that back then the same, but I had a lot of issues. I was very broken, and it took a lot of years to heal. And I mean, I still work on it daily. So we've come very far from back then. Sometimes I look back and I really wonder how we're still together. But, there was probably about the first 10 years of our relationship was not good.
it was very rough. Yeah,
Very rough.
very rough. Yeah. We both had so much baggage and so much undealt with trauma that we had no idea, and now as we continue we work really hard on that and have identified so many things in our lives that cause us to, become the way we are. But we didn't, it just all of our nasty trauma pretty much came out at each other, and we were both, victims of, well, you did this, so I'm going to do this, and you made me, and you acted like this, so I did this. It was a lot of that we had to, really take a look at, and it wasn't until 2014 when we had got we started out, we did all right. We kind of had a family with my two older boys, and then Zeke was born. But then I got back into my addiction, and I think we both just started going down a really dark path that time, and we had come to the point where, like, we lost everything. In 2014, we lost everything in a very, very traumatic way. We were out of our home. We were homeless. We lost our youngest son. Luckily, it was only temporarily, and we were just kind of, you know, had to completely start our lives over at that time. And some of the people that we had talked to and that tried to help us along, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Red Rocks Church in Denver, but they're a pretty good church in Denver, and they helped us get started and kind of, picked us up from when we were both at our worst. And Gary, who's also a marriage counselor, we started seeing him, and he was like, man, I don't even see how you two can sit in the same room together and you'd be so peaceful. So even though there was a point in time where we did not get along, he never really disrespected me, never, you know, neither one of us aired our stuff out. We kept it very private, and we didn't involve any of our kids or anything. But we just come to a point. I think we both hit that same point at the same time through different sources that we got to change. Like, I knew I had to change everything in my life, or else, I'm going to lose everything. In order for me to get back to having a decent life, then, I had to make some major changes. And we both kind of went down that same road. And
How
luckily,
long did how long did both of you struggle with addiction prior to meeting?
so for me, it was been my entire life, pretty much since I was uh, maybe 13, 14 years old, up until I was about 46. So most of my life, I spent in and out of prisons or treatment centers, detoxes, rehabs, jails, whatever. So it was kind of a constant thing for me. For her,
I would say, it's kind of was progressive. So I started when I was 14, um, dabbling and stuff, but I didn't really get addicted until, I don't know, maybe 17, 18, when it really took a hold of me, and then it just spiraled. So by the time it was short lived compared to him, because I was, like I said, 24 years old by the time I went to the program. And then once I got out, it didn't become, it circled back around in about 2013, but really in 2014. So it was September of 2014 when really everything hit the fan and we lost everything. And so from there, I knew that there were huge consequences at this point, and I knew that I needed to get help, and I was not going to lose my kid, and that was the most important thing to me. And I had to put our relationship and anything we had going on the back burner and just focus on my child. And so I, at that point, went back to AA and got a sponsor and really started diving into my step work and working on myself. And I kind of allowed him to just go do what you're going to do, because we just weren't on the same page at the time. And so, so I worked on myself, and so I started going to Red Rocks and getting the counseling. And then he started to go with me.
I just ended up there because she was giving me a ride one day and was like, you can either wait here or go inside.
So he went with me, and he started doing that. And then they also did a 6-week course, for a marriage course, and we ended up taking that. And the book, the workbook, really, for me personally, anyway, he can talk about his view on it, but it had a lot of these questions and really brought stuff to my awareness of my part in like just something simple that I can't remember what the question was, but something about what would you like your spouse to do differently or something. And that one of his answers was for me to smile at him when he came in the room or something. I thought, wow, yeah, who wants somebody just scowling when you walk in a room, right? So I was like, okay, I can change that. And so it's just those simple things that I really started to, um, get that self awareness and know that I need to change. And also, 'cause I could tell you everything he needed to change, but to see what I needed to change as well. But that didn't end there. We actually took that twice, but it was very hard to try to stay married to him, I think, at that time. And I did actually end up giving him divorce papers. And
I still have them somewhere.
and I think for him that was a
That was an
huge
eye opener for me.
turning point.
Would you say that that was both your rock bottom year, or was
Yes.
there a different point that was a rock bottom for
That
both
was
of you?
that was a rock
That
bottom.
was it. Yep.
2014. I can pretty much tell you the date.
How much sobriety did you have before starting to use again?
Before what?
Before starting to use again? Because you guys met and you were in a program. So that was, like 15 years before that, right? Or 12 or something.
There's a
It was
few
like
years,
12.
probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
So probably, I'm going to say 7 years, maybe. It was what I thought was enough at that point, but I hadn't really worked on myself. I had just worked on, being sober and, or just, I went to the program because I was forced to go. It was either that or a 12-year prison sentence. So ultimately I went in there and I had to be there long enough to get clean. And after a couple of years, I had, I'd got my head together and I thought, yeah, I got this under control. But I never worked on, what caused me to continue to make those same cycles. Because ever since I was young, I started doing this, and at 18, I went to a treatment center because I was so bad I had broken a couple needles off in my arm from cocaine use, and I did a 30-day. It was long enough for me to get clean, so I could go out and do it again. Then I went down this path again, and then that ended up taking me to a 6-year prison sentence. Then a couple years of, 3 or 4 years of getting clean through prison and getting out, and then doing, same thing. It just the cycle kept getting longer and worse because I hadn't worked on so many things in my life that caused me, and it was all around my mom leaving when I was a little boy. My dad was, you know, I hate to say the word abusive, but he was very angry and he parented me like a drill sergeant, and it was rough. So it was just me and my brother and my dad. So I had this, I had to put up these walls and become this really hard person. And the only way to numb that was drugs. And I never really went back and, started peeling those layers back until I started doing the work after, probably 2014, 2015, as I started to get sober and clean again. It was like, what do I got to do so that I don't even go down these roads again?
Damon, can you talk about the car accident, and why do you think that that wasn't a rock bottom time for
Well, it
you?
was in a different sense. It was a major rock bottom for me. So yeah, I had met this woman when I got out of prison, and we had two boys, and we'd been together for a little over 7 years. And one night we were driving back from Pueblo, and we went off the road and rolled over, and my boys got injured really bad, and she died. So yes, it was very, very. And I was on a path of destruction, and I wouldn't allow myself to sleep for, I don't know, it seemed like a year went by that I didn't sleep. I was just abusive to myself. I didn't care. I wanted to die. They didn't want to be the one that took my own life. But I also had two boys that I knew that needed me. So like I had that. I think kind of got me through that. But all of that, the drug use and just my life had gotten so out of control. That's when I ended up back in jail and was looking at a 12-year prison sentence. And then I went to a halfway house. I was there for like 6, 7 months. That didn't work. I went back to the jail, and then the alternative was to go to Stout Street. So I was really a wreck when I went to Stout Street, but it was like I'm going to either do my time here or I'm going to do my time in prison. I don't want to go back to prison. So that was, yeah, it was a low spot in a different way than this one, because I've had two major rock bottoms in my life, and those were both of them. This one was, I don't know, it was just different. They're two completely different, massive events in my life that, I've had to do a lot of healing around.
Were you able to raise your older sons, or did someone else raise
I
them?
was for a while, but I wasn't in any shape to raise them because I drug them around with me. I just went, I was 24 hours a day up. And so, I dealt with meth for years. I battled meth addiction. So it was just, that was my thing. And I had become a meth cook. So it was like I had it all the time. And so for me to just constantly stay that way, but I had my kids with me, and it was a mess until I finally had got arrested. Luckily, I had dropped them off at my brother's house, and they when I got arrested, and so they weren't with me. And so my brother helped me. Yes, I owe a lot to my brother and his wife, because when I left the Stout Street, I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Can you help me and watch my kids? So for a couple of years while I was gone, they took my kids, and they did a really good job. So I was really lucky that I had somebody there that could help me with that. But for quite a while, I was a mess, and I tried to raise them. And every time, it seemed like every time, and I was just telling her this, it seemed like every time I tried to get something back together, I got a place, I put my oldest boy in school, and the trailer that we were in caught on fire and burnt down. So now I was homeless again, and I had my two kids, and that's, and it just like seemed like I couldn't get ahead. I couldn't do anything at that time. But I was living a very very toxic and dangerous life. And so, I mean, I'm glad it happened the way it did, because they're safe, and they've kind of gone through their own thing. But
And did you say there were 6 kids altogether?
yes.
And where are the other ones?
So in the midst of that, I met a woman that was she was in the drug circle, and she ended up getting pregnant. I got her pregnant, and so I had another boy. She's still out there, a mess. She hasn't never cleaned her life up. At least I have a good relationship with that boy, and he's a pastor at a church in Minnesota. So he's done really well, considering his life has been really hard. So with me, that's kind of where my 3 went, and I can kind of let you tell her. She can tell you about her 3. So her 3 previous.
Yeah. So my oldest just turned 30. I had him when I was 15. So his dad actually just passed away a little over a year ago. And but we were young. We were together like a year after he was born, maybe. And then but we've always had a pretty good relationship. And he used, well, So he went with his dad when I went to Stout Street, and then my daughter went with my mom, and then I have another boy, and he was with his dad. So we couldn't have our kids in the program. So, but and the third one was just a baby when I went in. So for me, I didn't want to come out and interrupt all their lives, and so they just stayed. But my daughter would come with us, that she lived close. So the boys would come, we could drive. They lived farther away, so but we would get them in. So we didn't ever have all of the kids all at one time, typically. Well, not ever,
I
because
don't think
his
ever.
third boy also lived far away. So, it was kind of,
There'd be like maybe 4
yeah,
at one point where they were all kind of together.
yeah. So
How's
Yeah.
your relationship with them now?
Pretty good. As
Yeah.
far as my relationship with my older boys is really good. I think both of our relationships with our boys are pretty good. I have a really good relationship with her oldest boy, Austin. I really like him a lot.
he's a musician also, so they
Yeah.
get along in that.
And Zoe, she's
Yeah, she's
she's
the
always
one.
been there.
She's the one that we've probably been with the most, just because she was the closest. But she's the one that's going to have the baby, and I'm so excited for her. And
So her and Zeke are the closest together. So
yeah,
they,
our youngest,
our youngest boy,
boy,
the 14-year-old.
she was so excited. She was like, "This is my living baby doll." So she really liked. I mean, she was what, 9, I think, when he was born, and 9 or 10, and so she was super excited. So they're very close, and so yeah, I think over the years, I've really been intentional about working on my relationship with them, and not that it was bad, but I, with a lot of the healing that I've done on myself, I just I recognize what damage it did to them. And so, I've been able to really talk a lot about that to them. And I know my oldest also battles alcohol addiction, and he's had a lot of years where he's really has, he's battled that for a long time. And he's just recently gotten sober and is going to AA also. And, he's been, I'm really proud of him. He's come a long ways just in the few months he's been sober. And so, so we're able to talk a little more about that stuff too. And how, because I think it's really important that you recognize that stuff. And that's what helps you to stay clean. Because you have to, as one of his mentors says, you have to feel it to heal it. If you don't bring it to the surface and look at it and do the work around the things that generally it's from our childhood, then it's you're always going to be wanting to numb, and so or you're just going to avoid, and you're going to be a workaholic, or whatever you're going to do to not work on those things.
Not have to look at those issues.
Yeah. So I think feeling those things and staying clean, in my experience, go hand in hand.
So prior to up until 2014, would you say that the two of you didn't really delve into those issues at all? And just kind of was repeating the same chaotic circle or cycle?
Yes and no. for me, different than him. For me, when I went to Stout Street, we had a lot of classes, and that's where a lot of my awareness started to come. But it was just seeds, and I didn't really grasp everything yet, or even that I was really truly an alcoholic, or what that looks like. I thought, oh, later on, it was a lot of years, but I thought, oh, well, I don't know, maybe I wasn't an alcoholic. I've been fine all these years. And it didn't take long, to up to 2013, 14 in there to very quickly take that first drink. And then it was the second. And then it was, each day was closer and closer until it took me down again. And I just down spiraled. And it got worse than previous times.
Did anything happen at that time?
Yes. So I was back in the drug game, and I was on a stolen motorcycle, and I got pulled over by the cops, and had no idea that this motorcycle had been the focus of a major auto theft ring. And they came and they raided the house, and they destroyed our house, and they found more drugs, and then they found a lot of things that they, just because of my past, they automatically assumed, I was, I was doing the bad things, and so the police got involved, and that they came in and they tore our place apart. We both were taken to jail. Well, he didn't go to jail right away. I did. I went to jail, and I had just a big stack of charges that I had to deal with. So
And I had no idea what was going on.
yeah,
None. So it was completely like pulling the carpet right out from under me, and I was like blindsided.
So there was a lot of things going on and you just didn't see it.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, there was a lot going on. I think I had gotten to the point in my addiction where I didn't really, I guess I didn't care anymore. It had taken over so much. I think she was dealing with her addiction, and was so far we were both so far out of touch with reality that
and each other.
and each other, that I was doing my own thing and she was doing her own thing. And so, like, half the time we didn't know where each other were, and we would come to, okay, my turn to watch Zeke or whatever. And so we were just completely disconnected from our lives and each other. So
Why do you think you were so motivated to help yourself heal this time and not the other children as well?
as far as me, I just realized I'm a habitual offender. I've been in those jails and prisons, and I knew that if I got out of this, that it's like I don't ever want to be. I had hated the person that I had become. It's so bad that I just decided that I got to do everything I can to become somebody completely different. I knew that there would be a way that once I got myself clean, that I would have to go. I always got clean for the wrong reasons before, but this time I went out and I looked for what all of the resources I need to that I never did before. And I guess a lot of things were showed to me and or were brought to me that I had no idea even existed. So like I knew about NA and AA, but I didn't know about mentoring. I didn't know about, those kind of groups, like what the stuff that we're involved with now. I had no idea any of that stuff existed before because I guess I wasn't looking for it. But now as I started intentionally looking for how can I help myself? How can I be the best version of myself? I never really focused on my health. I never really focused on, like, now I want to be the best husband I can. I want to be the best father I can. I want to be the best business person I can. I want to be the healthiest person I can. And I want to, like every aspect of my life, I want to be the best at, where I never had that before. I just wanted to get clean so I wouldn't be in trouble.
Yeah, I think it was a little different for me. I didn't feel that way at all. I always, when I went to jail and got more clear-headed, coming off drugs and alcohol, that was always the biggest, most painful part is being away from my kids. But I just, when you're so into your addiction and you're just numbing, it's not fun to be an addict or an alcoholic and be out of control and just can't get that next fix, or just that's what you're focused on. It's not fun, but it's definitely you're wanting to numb and stop all of the pain. So you're just jaded. And I couldn't, so it's not that you don't care about your kids, you don't love them. So when I was coming off, I didn't have that numbing factor going on anymore. It was so painful. And so when you're stuck in that cycle of shame, you're going to then go drink more because now I feel more shame. So now I'm going to go drink more, and it just keeps going. And it's like a snowball effect. So every time I was away from my kids, it was so painful. And that's when I went to treatment. That was the first time I've been to treatment, is when I went to Stout Street. And so, that's what I did it for. I was like, I want my kids back. And for a lot of years, I did live a good life. I had my own business. I did hair for over 20 years. So at that point, a little less, but, so I was succeeding in life, and I had my kids in my life. And I just, there's layers to healing. There's layers to, all the, you get older, you get wiser, right? And so, so for me, Stout Street was the first place that I took classes and became aware of issues, of trauma, of, these patterns we have. And so when I got out, then I did step work, or so I had different modalities or whatever to look in, but it's like I said, like a layer of an onion, right? So you go deeper and deeper and deeper. One thing I read a lot of books. I, I've been to retreats. I've done all these different things, and one thing, opens up another door to something else. So at that time in 2014, I just didn't know what I know now. I just hadn't gotten there yet to like the last probably 5 or 6 years. I've been so blessed to work with my aunt, who does childhood trauma, like brain work, where I'm not sure what it's called, but it's probably similar to a lot of things they call different, they call it different, but it's the neuroplasticity,
Mhm.
So we do some really deep childhood trauma. And I think that has been a game changer, but I didn't have that back then. So my understanding, like I said, I didn't even know really what alcoholic meant. I mean, you do, the gist, but I didn't realize, like I said, I questioned it. Well, maybe I'm not. I've been good for this many years, and so it just took the journey it took. But I tell you, in 2014, that changed everything for me, because the day I called my friend and was like, hey, come get me, take me to AA, I knew that, this now again, I got my kid taken away again. I thought I was going to do this the right way. This one was going to be different, and it wasn't. And that caused me some lot of PTSD. Basically, for a lot of years, I couldn't even look up at people. I was so full of shame. And that was the worst that I'd ever felt because I did it again. I should have known better. How did I let this happen again? You know? And I knew, I was like, I will never, now I know I'm an alcoholic. I will never allow myself to be in that position again. So I had to make sure that my mind, body, and spirit were always in check because I've always dealt with anxiety, very high anxiety, depression, stuff like that. And so obviously, like that, the alcohol calmed that, and now I can't use that as an option. So I have to always be very diligent and always be intentional about my healing and what I'm doing. I'll never go there again, and so it was just different.
Addiction treatment is very complex because, what works for someone or what is the pivotal moment for one person might be different for another person. In fact, it always is, right? It's going to be different for each person. And I think a lot of people ask, like, what was your rock bottom, to see what was that motivating factor for you to help motivate someone else, right? And a lot of times in addiction, people say you can start treatment or start working the program for someone else, but eventually you have to do it for yourself, right? And so what would you both say to someone who is struggling in the same way right now, right? What kind of advice, or what would you say to them to maybe help guide them towards their motivating factor?
Well, what is it? First, I would probably have them figure out who are the 5 most important people in their lives, and look at that, and what is it costing them by you not being present? What kind of effect are you having on those people, and what is it costing you in that way? What's it costing you, monetarily? What is it costing you to do that? And do you want to continue to, how big is that cost? What does that got to be before you're willing to make a change? When you start relating it to, what you're taking away from the ones that love you the most, that's a big one, and that, because it helped me through my roughest times. It's like, what are my, what Damon are my kids getting? Because they're not getting me at all. So do I want that? When I start maybe putting myself in that position of like, hey, I want my dad, and he's checked out. So those are some of the things that I've learned, and also on the other side of that, who is successful at doing what you want to do, and what are they doing, and how can I follow what they're doing? Because that was a lot of, for me, is what are these people doing different that I didn't do, or what are they doing to become successful, or how are they keeping themselves from going out and using again? So when I started finding those kind of people and looking for that, but that's the thing, is you have to look for it. You have to have that need for change. And that's the number one point. And that's the first chapter in my book, is the need for change. Until you have that need for change, what is that motivator?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really hard question to answer because it's just like you said. I mean, for example, with my oldest son, of course I wanted him to be sober. I had to watch him for a lot of years wreck his life. And, he wasn't, of course I would say things, hey, or, whatever. And it does until someone's done that you can't do anything for them. I he ended up with some severe consequences and almost dying from drinking and ended up in the hospital multiple times. But the last time, it was starting to give him really bad seizures, like 8-hour long seizures where he was out and, and it was horrible. So I went to the hospital this last time and went every single day and sat with him. And I basically told the nurses, I was like, you really need to tell him that each time he does this, it gets worse. And, everything they told me, that you need to tell him that because coming from us, he wasn't there to see it. So he doesn't see it like we see it, and it was really scary, but I had only hoped that was going to open his eyes, and because obviously other times it didn't. Well, this last time, he still, I kept encouraging him, like, hey, if you want to go to a meeting, I'll always go with you. And he drank again. And finally he called me one day and I just happened to go into the city he lives in. And he had called me and he's like, Mom, I drank again. And I was like, all right, well, you know what? I could tell he's coherent enough that, hey, I just pulled it into, he's supposed to, I'll take you to a meeting. And he was like, well, I didn't drink. And I said, doesn't matter, let's go. And he said, let me take a shower. And I'm going. He finally took my advice. And I went to a meeting with him. And, this time, but he had been to him before because he was court ordered, and he was like, but until he was ready, till he had enough consequences, it's going to cost his life. And luckily he doesn't have any kids or anything, but, once he started going and taking it seriously, he sat in that meeting and it's like, oh, man, and he was just drawn to it. And so I couldn't do anything until he was actually ready, which, we know we actually hired people who are from out of prison and, on parole and probation and people who have their habits. And all we can do is be role models and be a support in, ways without enabling, but we can't make any of them
No, I have a lot of
stop.
people that work for me, and they deal with the same thing, and I know they haven't gone through what the bottom line is. You have not received enough pain. You haven't experienced enough pain or something bad enough in your life to make you want to quit. And usually, that's the biggest factor is how bad is it got to get.
If you try to take away somebody's rock bottom, you will be disappointed because you'll probably be resentful, mad that you made them go to treatment, or mad that you made them go to wherever. They'll be mad, and until
And they
they're
didn't
done,
quite get there. Yep.
if you don't let them get there on their own, there's, you can't do anything about it. You can't force sobriety on people.
And it's definitely a very hard position to be in as a parent to watch your kids struggle like that. So, Damon, let's talk about the book.
Okay.
What motivated you to write the book?
So I had a lifelong set of stories that, I've gone through a lot of really crazy experiences, and, I've had to deal with some, probably a lot of stuff that most people don't normally deal with, some severe types of trauma. And I just figured, what, I need to write a book, and I've been talking about it for a while. It's like, I'd like to, but I didn't know what I wanted to write about. I just knew I wanted to, kind of get some stories out there. And then I met a guy through one of the storage shed, just through one of the groups, mastermind groups that I go to. And he's like, yeah, well, what's stopping you? And I'm like, well, I don't know. And he said, well, I'm a ghostwriter. I can help you do that. and it gave me such a clarity that, and he helped me put that into a vision. But basically, I really wanted to help people go from, because I went from extremely poor on a farm raising animals to going through this. I didn't have a mom, and going through all of this trouble and fighting addiction and being in and out of prisons and all of this stuff, the car accident and losing somebody, to becoming an entrepreneur and owning several different businesses and becoming successful, to be able to relate to people and be like, it doesn't matter where you're at, it doesn't matter what you've done in your life. There's a way out, and there, you know what, and I can show you, I can help you with different ways of breaking out of the 9 to 5, because that's always been my thing too. I've always worked for somebody, and once I changed a lot of mindset, everything changed. So that was kind of, once I talked to the Mike, who's with the Dream Starter Publishing. Once I talked to him, the guy was super good at pulling things out of people, like getting to the stuff. And then it gave me the focus. Okay, I want to write a book so that I can show people and teach people how to do this, and kind of give them a little bit of a blueprint to go from this to becoming successful. So, and I've got probably more coming out. Now, just when I wrote, just kind of, it was real easy for somebody to be able to sit down and read. And so I think I want to get a little deeper and more complex into things, because I was really kind of focusing on maybe people that were that had felonies, or that maybe gone through prison, or were trying to transfer or make a transition from the 9 to 5 world into becoming a business owner or an investor. So I'd learned a lot of tools along the way, and I just wanted to share those. So that's kind of what the whole book's about. My
Hence,
journey.
hence the title, The Breakout Blueprint, which I think is, you definitely got a lot of first world real life examples there to draw from.
Yeah, it was my life, and it was rough for a lot of years until I changed my mindset. And I think that's the biggest key to everything, is when you look at something completely different. For one example, when I got out of when I was transferring or transitioning from working a 9 to 5 job to doing rehabs, letting that security go, I was always, well, how do you do this without any money? Where do you get the money to go do a rehab? Somebody told me, he's like, quit looking for the money, quit chasing the money, because what you chase is going to run from you. And it just like, okay, so I had to change my mindset around that. And he was like, learn how to put a deal together. I'm like, oh, I know how to put a deal together. I know how to do rehab. So once I learned a different skill set, then I'm like, okay, there's all kinds of people out there with money that want to be involved. And then I started doing that with like all these different areas of my life. And it's like, oh, wow, this is I got to look at this completely different. What am I after? And what is my goal? So those are kind of the things that, because I didn't know any of that stuff, but it was those little moments where somebody said, if you do this, this is going to change. And I'm hoping that I can, give those little golden nuggets out to people that are like, oh yeah, because I know there's certain times in my life when light bulbs went off, and it's like, oh man, I got this, and I did, and I ran with it, and I went down this avenue, and I became successful with this. So, and that's all part of, I think, it's also helps me stay accountable and keeps me sober and clean, and working with her to be the best that we can be. So
That's fantastic. And you can get that book on Amazon. Is that correct?
yes, you can get it at Amazon, the Breakout Blueprint, or you can go to my website, which is just DamonNichols.com. I have some coaching stuff in there, and I'm building a course, and I have material, and I have a lot of like really powerful exercises and tools and stuff that we learned that really made. Now, for me, they were very impactful, and they changed the way I looked at myself. And they changed the way I looked at my child. They changed the way I looked at addiction, and through those different exercises, they helped me uh, become where I'm at now. So,
Fantastic.
So, last question. What is it that your partner does that you know they love you?
excuse me.
What is it that your partner does that you know she loves you?
So many things. She's there for me no matter what. She puts up with whatever.
Not whatever.
She puts up with a lot, and she always wants to be with me, and that's super cool because we're together all the time. I think the fact that she wants to be with me, I took that for granted for so many years, and I went off and did my own thing. But having somebody that wants to hang out with me all the time is is super cool. I love that about her. So that's a big one for me there.
And
You
how
want
about for you?
um, I now you put me on the spot. My mind went blank. No, he does a lot of things that make me feel loved every day. Um, so one thing that I really enjoy is our morning times. We get to get up, and he always will go and make the coffee and bring it to me, and um, we just sit and kind of talk about stuff, and just I don't know. I really enjoy those moments, but he works really hard for our family, and to give us the life that we have. He is probably the hardest worker that I've ever met in my life. So I mean, physically hard, mentally hard, all of it. He's very, very intelligent, and he's, and I think the fact that he became willing to better himself, to better our marriage, showed a lot as well. So yeah, he shows me he loves me. I feel very loved every day, all day. I
That's
feel loved.
fantastic.
It is nice. I cherish every day unless we're out on the road doing a project, we get to lay in bed for an hour or two in the morning and just drink coffee and talk and have massage time and yeah.
He gives me massages like every morning. It's so amazing.
Yeah. So I think that helps us really stay connected. So that's
And then he goes and does his errands for work or whatever, and I go with him, and go eat lunch, or just I just like hanging out with him.
something else. So I started really getting into fitness, and I'm doing a lot of really crazy competitions, and I mean competing in Tough Mudders and Spartans and these Deca Fits and doing triathlons and all of that. And at one time she was like, "I'll never do that," but she's with me. She works out with me almost every day. I've gotten her to go and do some of these competitions with me, things that I think she's never thought she'd ever do. And I pushed her out of her comfort zone so many times, and
But
and
he's doing this podcast.
and she's willing to do it. And so
Yeah. I was like, you signed us up for what?
Well,
So
thank you guys. People have been sharing their stories since the beginning of time to bond and heal and grow. And we hope that by you guys sharing your story, it's enriched your lives and the lives of our listeners.
thank you.
thank you.
I want to thank all of you for joining us today on Couple Synergy. Our passion is in helping couples and people have healthy happy and healthy relationships. And this podcast gives us a fun way of bringing our knowledge and expertise to you, our listeners. For all of you listening, please let us know how you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as Relationship 101, the Home Study Course, the next Couples Relationship Enhancement Weekend, and our premier coaching program called Couple to Couple, look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.